You just have to be comfortable with your decisions in your own skin and just say, I really couldn't care. This is my life. Family is good with it. And that's all that matters to me.
Welcome back, investor. We got another episode of the Passive Income Adventures with Jaspreet Baveja with us today. Say hello, Jaspreet.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaspreet. How are you?
Calling in from California. And Jaspreet, I've been wanting to interview you for a while on the show. So basically, what we're talking about today is when you and I met in person in California last summer, I asked you a couple of questions. If you had to start all over, what would you do? What's your life look like after financial freedom? Because you're still quite young. And you just had the most wise old man answers. And it really got me thinking as we continue to travel and now we're back home living in our house. A lot of what you said last summer has really stuck with me. And so I've just been wanting to get more in depth and have another conversation with you where my listeners can actually tune in and hear about your incredible story, what you're doing with life, and also just how we talk about still we're having failures, still we're having problems, still having setbacks, and how we stay positive through all of that. So, just great. Introduce yourself to us. Give us your backstory. Where'd you come from? And catch us up to the present day.
All right. I was born in India. So I was there till I was almost 14 and a half years old. And then I moved to the US. I was in New York for my sophomore year of high school and junior year. Then I moved to Miami for my senior year of high school. So three different high schools, not
Wow.
fun. And then I went to Penn State for computer engineering. It's just been a lot of bouncing around, but I decided I didn't like engineering 3.5 years into my degree, just the last semester left. And I was like, no, just not my life. I can't do this. And luckily enough for my father, he had told me year one that I will pay for your first year of college. After that, it's all on you. Do whatever you want, wherever you want, however long you want to take, because you're the one paying for it. Go for it. I guess I took that to heart. 7.5 years of undergrad. I finally walked away with a business degree and a computer science minor, but essentially got into tech. I was one of the coolest jobs I had was that I was an IT manager on semester at sea where the college kids come and get on your ship and you're sailing across the world. And I was the IT manager on board. And then eventually I moved to California in 2010 and got a job at Kaiser, which is one of the largest healthcare firms out here in about 8 different states, and got into regulatory compliance consulting for
That
medical firms.
sounds so exciting.
Oh my goodness. It was just trillions of data sets all the time. And I was one of two people on a team of 200 people that was designated for both the business side of things and the tech side of things.
Okay.
So I was told, look, buddy, you're going to make business decisions. You're going to help save us $250 million fines. And you're also going to tell the analysts what data to pull from where, what does it need to look like, and then manipulate it yourself, create dashboards, do all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, thank you for giving me the honor. Am I getting paid any more than the other guys? No.
No.
Okay,
No.
then. Sounds good. And just living that life was tough. That was the first job I had where I got stress. I had migraine headaches. I never before in my life, never again after since I quit. In 2017, one of my previous managers who I became buddy buddies with forced me into real estate and said, you need to start investing in real estate. You need to buy properties. So I started buying properties in my backyard, which is Indiana, while you live in California, because I was
Oh,
not
sorry.
affording anything in California. I was like, dude, there's
Yeah.
no way I can even buy a shed in California. Forget it. But let's go to Indiana and Indianapolis. All of a sudden, I'm buying duplex for $42,000 with people
Yep.
living in it, paying rent. And you're going, what? Anyway, started doing that. And in 2018, somebody that I was doing business with, a wholesaler, reached out and said, hey, would you mind lending me money? And what do you mean lending you money? That's what banks are for. What do you mean? Why would I lend you money? How would that even work? Is it legal? What all these things happened. And since that time in 2018, I've now done like 360 plus loans as a private lender. But that got me to the point of snowball effect. And in 2019, basically like February of 2019, I came home on a Friday and I was like, babe, I'm done with this job. I want to quit. And her knee jerk reaction was, are you crazy? No. And Saturday, we said, okay, she came back and said, if you had to quit, what would it look like for us financially?
Mhm.
And we sat down and literally went through every expense, income, where money goes every month for the whole year, wrote it all down, looked at her income, my income, did everything and calculated. On Sunday, we said, so if I quit my job, it would basically mean no difference to our lifestyle. She's, wow, that's not bad. And then Monday morning, I handed in my resignation. So within a weekend, it was done.
Wow.
But they're like, listen, could you stay around for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So I stayed till May,
Mhm.
and we were leaving for our 7 country tour that summer in June. So I stayed basically till the end of May, and then we were bounced. And we were traveling Europe and Asia and all. So that's what my life changed to was, okay, we're going to hit at least X number of countries a year from now on. So continuing this year, we've hit 7 countries again this so far.
Yeah,
My 10-year-old has been to like 19 countries in her life,
yeah,
and not a lot of families can say that. All for pleasure, all with your mom and dad both disconnected from phones, just you and the family hanging out from beaches in Hawaii to beaches in Portugal to beaches in Dubai to beaches in Thailand. Doesn't matter because you're in the mountaintops, you're ziplining in Canada, or you're taking scuba diving somewhere else. That's the kind of life we've tried to build. And so the biggest now source of income for me since I quit in 2019 is definitely the passive income that comes from private lending.
mhm.
And other than that, I've still got a couple of those properties that I bought in 2017, sold off pretty much everything in 2019, then rebought a few more. You learn, okay, these C neighborhoods look great on paper, but not doing so great. So let's move over to the B neighborhoods. So that kind of transition I did. But I've kept 3 units in Indianapolis, one duplex, one single family, and then converted a house that we built here in California. It took a year and a half. And a year and a half living in it, we decided we're going to bounce, put it on rent. And that rent pays for my current rental in a much better neighborhood. We're basically downtown Palo Alto. The people that I meet on the streets are CEO of Yahoo, owner of Facebook, guy who's Kamala Harris's nephew-in-law. And these are the kinds of people I just literally am walking down the street and, hello, hi, Jaspreet, what's up? And I'm paying nothing to live here because my rental income from just the house I was in before is paying its own mortgage and my rent to live here. So couldn't have asked for better. And my kids have a better educational access and community and neighborhood to be in. So there's a lot of stuff that has happened, but jobs to private lending to GP and syndications, which was also something that I got into. We'll
Yeah.
never do again. At least
For
not as a
those
lead, man.
if you're watching
Uh-oh.
on video, he just did a gesture that's gonna get
Gun to
us,
my head.
censored on YouTube, but
But yeah,
yeah,
you're constantly trying to balance active and passive incomes and how bored you are and how much your spouse hates you for being home all day while they work.
right.
Stuff happens.
Usually we get into that a little bit later because we
Yeah.
for those regular listeners, we do like a past, present, future. But if you're a new listener, usually we talk about like the past, the origin story, the pivot points, like when you decided to either change things or you had a great example of how to do something right and how that affected you. And then we talk about what you're working on right now. And then we talk about lifestyle design, bucket lists, kinds of things like that. But you mentioned something before we started chatting. You met my husband last summer when we set up for lunch. And one of the things that we talked about was back when my husband was on call, he's working from home. He was on call and he was doing like 10 to 12 hours a week of work. And he was getting paid for 40 and he was in school, but the tuition reimbursement would only pay one class per semester. So it took him like 7 years to finish the last 2 years of his bachelor's degree, right? He's just paying for whatever they would pay for, right? It was a good job. He was motivated to rush through it or anything. And even after he graduated, finally, he didn't end up changing jobs. Like they laid him off. That's what finally made him quit the shop. But for those years, he worked there like 12 years. It was really tough because he was home all the time, not really working that much. And there were a lot of arguments about how I got the baby up from the nap last time, or why don't you go move the laundry to the dryer, or these kind of household chores and tasks. And now in his 50s, he probably does more housework than I do. But back then, it was a huge bone of contention. And so sometimes we're looking at all the time and location freedom, we're spend so much time together and all this. But I was working part-time, he was, working part-time, and it did cause a lot of tension that he would say things like, "I'm just gonna go into the office and work," and because they had a hotel style
Hey,
office where you just come in and out whenever you wanted to. And I'd be like, "Really? You're gonna go into the office?"
to
Like
avoid this, like just moving
yeah.
the laundry over.
Yeah, and he never did. I think that it took us a while, but we really ended up in a great groove of communication and who's doing what and just going to redefine a relationship because those more standard traditional gender roles just were not really applying like the way we were raised. So there was a lot of
Mhm.
negotiation that went into it. So you were mentioning recently that once you get to the point where you have retired on your passive income, your hard money lending business is fairly passive. You're getting pretty good at quickly underwriting deals, what you're going to lend on, what you're not going to lend on, not messing around with a lot of the research phase and learning and network anymore. It's on wheels. How are you spending your time now? And how is that? Because people are like, I just want to retire at a beach in Mexico. And then they're like, I'm so bored. So how are you
Yeah.
coping? What are you up to?
Hey, yeah, so I think when that passive income really started and kicked off in 2019 when I quit the job, it was great for a few months, and by the end of 2019, I was itching to do something else,
Hmm.
and I had already started investing as a limited partner in other people's syndications from somebody I met at work when I was still at Kaiser or through online platforms like, and I'm forgetting the biggest one, but
Crowd, yield, fund,
CrowdStreet,
crowd,
CrowdStreet.
crowd street.
Yeah. So CrowdStreet and finding people through networking events, which I was attending in person, right? No COVID yet. So a lot of in person was still happening. So I was
Mhm.
go to these things and friends and people would get involved. So a lot of LP stuff. And I figured if I'm not really doing jack and I've got all these LP income streams and passive stuff, then maybe I can get into active GP side. And one of my private loans actually got me into the GP side.
Mhm.
And that was when I said, okay, now I'm going to be a general partner. My names are going to start, my name's going to start showing up on loans. My name's going to be on these investor updates. I'm going to see the back end workings because I've already seen what the updates should and shouldn't look like from
Yeah.
operators and what the underwriters should and should not be looking for based on all these things that I've seen and heard and attended, all these events and
Mhm.
invested in. So I'm going to be great. I know what to do it for, and life is going to be great. And then came COVID, basically right after I joined, and immediately thereafter it was a crap show. We're buying deals, we're raising money, and so that took up a vast majority of my time. Like I'd say
Yeah.
40 hours a week was getting spent on managing that part of the business of getting on phone calls with investors or leads and converting to investments and attending property management calls, asset management calls, investor updates, webinars, underwriting meetings. There's just a
Oh,
lot goes
no,
into
that's it.
running a private equity firm. That's what it is. The
Basically,
private
yeah.
and if your name shows up as a director of one of four people that are own and manage this company, then you're on the line for a lot. And but still we were able to, since I had three other partners in that company alone, it was easier to be able to say, yep, guys, I'm gonna go on vacation, manage the stuff behind while I'm gone. So it still didn't impede as much as a, let's say, W-2 job would have with
Mhm.
deliverables and managers telling me what to do or when something to do it and all that stuff. So it was still better. But I think that was the one thing I would never repeat again in my life. I think,
Yeah.
especially as a lead GP, if I could raise capital, bring money to a deal, be that kind of a co GP, and still have a stake in the equity and get to see some inner workings of, let's say, developments versus just buying and flipping multifamily complexes, then I think I still enjoy learning. But if I'm the lead operator with all this headache and my name on the loan, I think that's where it just not something I want to do ever again. So we'll see. That's what I'm still part of. So that's where a lot of time still goes. I'm still running
Mhm.
the private lending stuff. And like you were saying, my wife has gotten tired of seeing me at home for 5+ years. But getting and still doing all the household chores if, whenever I'm asked to, or I put reminders like, hey, just read, don't forget to take out the trash midweek and at the end of the week, da 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 da, right? All these things are happening. So, but it's the 35 hours beyond all those that are still at home that you're not really being productive. I'm not really seeing a value. And all the other business, you say you have to put time there, but we're not getting income because deals aren't doing as great as they were. There's no real actual income coming in. It's just all going towards aging payables and and vendors and all that crap.
Mhm.
And you're paying your investors first, right? So there's really nothing left for the GPs.
Yep.
And so what the heck's the point? Go get a job. And
Yeah.
so yeah, as of last week, I've started applying for jobs
It's
and we shall
it's
see where that goes.
it's just amazing to me. There are so many people, and I don't know, you tell me if you were it doesn't sound like you were one of these guys. Like when you can't quit your job. My husband, lots of our friends, I love my job. I feel like I'm really contributing to building something bigger than myself. And even if I was financially free, I wouldn't quit. Or you hear stories of people who win the lottery and they go get up and go back to work the next day. Like, how long does that actually last? It doesn't really last. My husband got to the point where he was ready to quit on our passive income months before we were financially ready to have him quit. And it was, at first he'd be like, "Oh, I'm not quitting my job. I'm building something bigger than myself. I'm proud of what we do here." But when he started seeing like it was a real possibility, he started really seeing all of the negative sides that he was in denial about before.
Right.
So tell me from your point of view now, you've lived it on one side. You hate your job, you want to quit, you quit, and now you're like, maybe I should go work again. What's the difference in attitude? I only know the difference in getting laid off. Like
Mhm,
the
mhm.
first couple times he got laid off, we were freaking out. It's a crisis, right? And the last time he got laid off, we're like, you're gonna quit anyway. So that difference in attitude and that crisis mode was very different. So tell me where you are on this path of working by choice rather than by necessity.
So right now, I'll tell you, I'm not looking at anything that is stress inducing. I'm not looking for the $200,000 job. That's the income level that I was at before. And I'm not looking for anywhere near that. Money
Mhm,
is not the reason why I'm getting a job. I want to be able to get a job so that I have some income where my wife can then cut back her hours, where I have a good option to be able to take summers off, go still maintain the lifestyle, have good benefits so my wife can cut back, right? It's all about creating the balance in the relationship rather than,
mhm.
oh my God, I need money to be able to pay for the month everyday things.
Yeah.
So I think that is what's driving the decision on what I'm going to take as a job. So I'm applying for the school district jobs because I know they're out for the summer. So that's going to be great. My kids are out of school. I'll be out of work. So that'll be awesome. And taking 1 or 2 days off here whenever I can get my kids out, I can get those.
Mhm.
So that's more of a deciding factor than his job. That's beneath me. I did that 18 years ago. Why would I do that again? Because it's going to give you the freedom to continue to do what you want to do, which is go travel the world and
Yep.
take time and go ski in the winters and go hang out in Antarctica or go to Australia, whatever the heck the next plan is. That's the goal.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so that's the attitude shift is to say, no, it's not beneath you. It just helps you do what you really want to do and keeps you active, gets you income, gets you some kind of benefits and engaged in the environment in the workforce, but not have the same level of stress and responsibilities and
Mhm.
constantly feeling the pressure where you come back to crap. I want to quit this job right away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because when my husband left his job, I felt like it was we weren't financially ready as we
Mhm.
wanted to be. And we started a business. We're not pre-revenue, but we're definitely pre-profit. Just figuring out like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
what do we do from here? And I said, if you go back to work, what would it be? Because he was a IT guy.
Mhm.
And he was like, at Home Depot? You really want to put the orange apron and work at Home Depot? He was like, yeah, that actually sounds really interesting. Helping people with their home improvement projects. He loves that. Like he'll go up to his brother's houses and help fix out with that kind of stuff. Like somebody's put a new roof on or somebody's ran a tractor. Like, let's go up and help him drive it. So he just loves that kind of stuff. And recently I had the similar experience where my kids were like, I need to start a side hustle because I'm not making ends meet with these crappy jobs that they have, even with certificates. And so I was trying to teach my daughters how to start like a piano lessons business. And so we're putting ads on there and everything. And I booked a couple of piano students and the goal was to just give them to my daughters. But
Mhm.
I took the first couple lessons and I was like, actually, I love this. Just having a couple of piano students is a total distraction from what else I'm doing. And I'll still turn them over to my daughters eventually. But for the time being, it's just been really like a different change of pace. And you just start thinking about work very differently. So I love what you're talking about. But a lot of people, when we get to this point, they start talking about like volunteering and philanthropy, starting a nonprofit, and starting a nonprofit's like running a full time business again. So is that kind of how
It's
you're looking at some of those types of things as far as like giving back? Because your kids are still young enough that you're still really needed at home a lot. So how are you able to juggle the philanthropy side of what you do?
if you look at any time that somebody reaches out, I look in the way of giving back to the investor network. Anybody who has never invested before, never done a deal before, never done a private loan before, they're not paying me anything. I'm not running a mastermind. I'm not running a course. I'm giving out free education, giving them templates, giving them the things to watch out for, walking them through the deal that they're doing, showing them exactly how to do things. And that's my way of giving back, to say, listen, you're going to come to me. You're not going to get paid any less just because you went through me, because the interest rate's the same. You still get the point that you asked for, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But you have guardrails constantly with you for 1, 2, 5, 8, 20, 30, 80 deals, whatever you want to do. I'll be there the whole time until you want to go out on your own and do your own deals.
Mm.
I think that's the way I'm giving back right now to the investor world. And for the schools, I'm constantly volunteering in the kids' classrooms or in the library or yard duty or whatever it is that I can find a way to get involved, where you're still close to your kids, you're still able to be involved with their classrooms and give back without having this, oh, wow, you had to go and open a nonprofit or you have to
Yep.
go open some business to do things. No, I'm just finding avenues where the infrastructure already exists and I'm able to just plug myself in, give as much of my time and energy and effort that I can, and then go back to whatever I wanted to do without having to say, yep, this is my nonprofit or this is my philanthropy business. And no, I don't like headaches. I
Yeah.
don't like stress and tension. This is all black from 40 something years old because I hate stress.
Yeah.
And I don't let stress bother me until it gets to the point where it's like super, when $250 million number shows up and you're like, okay, that requires stress. But other than that's the way I do it. I just find avenues that already exist, plug myself in and give my time back that way.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great because I think before we get to the point where we reach financial freedom and can actually quit our jobs and start having reasonable conversations about this, a lot of us do have big dreams about going out and changing the world. And some of our investors really, really are doing that. My
Mhm.
partner started a nonprofit for virtual assistants who don't speak English as their native language, and I volunteer there teaching English once a week. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's an infrastructure that already exists. It's something that I don't have to have the headache for. We go
Mhm.
and volunteer in the community garden that donates the food to
Food.
local food bank, things like that. Like the Humane Society, we go and walk their dogs. It's stuff that somebody else is already doing it. We can plug ourselves into it. Even just like teaching piano lessons for free to some kids who can't really afford lessons, but
Mhm.
they could really use some piano. Like they could really
Yeah,
use
exactly.
some confidence.
Some
So
creative outlet.
yeah, we're high achievers. We think big, we dream big, but sometimes it's important to just recognize no, we don't actually want to be a general partner at the GP role. We don't actually want to start a nonprofit. Like there are community things that we can do. And that's one thing I've really admired about you. You show up to my free club almost
Mhm.
every Monday night and
Mhm.
you're never selling anything, coaching or whatever. If somebody wants to go in and do a loan with you, great. If not, you're there just to provide value and network and teach. And how many free phone calls do we spend hours and hours on just
Oh,
because we
yeah.
like talking about this stuff? Yeah.
Exa
It's a different perspective for sure, because I think we
Mhm.
talk a lot about you saving the world and becoming a zillionaire. And
Yep.
it's just not where most people wanna aim. And you mentioned something about living in Palo Alto and being around some great people.
Mhm.
Okay, some high achievers, and that's how you know you're in the right place when you're like, "Wow, look who I'm
Yep.
hanging out
Like,
with."
walk next to all the time. Yeah, or just yeah.
But how's that affecting you? Because I know, like, we downsized and we live in a kind of a starter home neighborhood now,
Mhm.
and we're still driving around our crappy minivans, and we wanted something that was just more free, like, more minimalistic, where we just drop everything, travel. If we didn't get it rented out, no big deal, we can afford it without a renter. So we were really looking for that kind of a lifestyle that have less strings attached, and it's definitely sometimes I feel like, "Why are we living in such a cheap house? I'm supposed to be, like, real estate." Sure. And I feel like lost her a little bit, but you talked about having kind of the opposite where you're hanging out with all these people who are doing some amazing things. You're like, what am I doing with my life? So how are you coping with valuing the slower life, but also being surrounded by jet setters, like literal jet setters?
So, I look at the values and the gifts that are in my life, right? So, we are renting a half of a duplex, okay? We went from
Hmm.
a house we built, 2,000 plus square feet, single story, 13 plus thousand square foot lot in Northern California. Okay. You can imagine
Yeah. It's a
the
nice
value,
area.
and literally built it from scratch, everything brand new, and left that to go live in a half of a duplex with 2 bedrooms. Okay. And I'm still driving a 2009 Camry with cloth seats. That's my
Yeah.
car. Okay. And
Mine's
I ride on a $100 bicycle and drop my kids to school. And every car that passes me by is either a Cybertruck, a Tesla. I've seen some Porsches, EVs, you name it, it's all here.
Mhm.
And to me, I look at them and go, how many vacation days a year do you actually get to take? They're like, oh, we would travel 3 countries this year. I said, how long did you go for? 2.5 weeks. Okay. Are you going to do a similar trip later this year? Maybe like a 1.5 week, 10 days. So let's say you're taking like 5 weeks out of the year. And how many hours a week are you working to be able to achieve this income so that you can pay for this house and the car and the lifestyle that you have? Like on average, 60 to 70 hours. If I'm working 4 hours a week and traveling 7 to 8 countries a year for at least 8 to 9 weeks out of the year with no stress, I'd rather take this life than that. So I
Yeah.
think it's just allowing people to have their priorities and not losing sight of your own is how I cope with it.
Ugh, yeah, it takes a lot of you really have to be on top of your mindset. That's what
Yes.
I've found. You have to own the decisions that you made for your own lifestyle, and I found that the more wealth we built, the less I
Hmm.
cared about all that extra stuff. Now, I am still embarrassed to pull up to a place in my 2005 Toyota Sienna minivan with the stained cloth seats that we've had for since like 2010, but I've made those decisions and I've found that like I would much rather buy a rental house than buy a nicer car. And I just don't want the stuff anymore. It just doesn't mean as much because when we had stuff, we spent a lot of time maintaining, organizing, and taking care of it. And so it wasn't just, like, yeah, you can afford it, but I couldn't afford like the guy to come and cut the lawn on top of. Maybe it would be
Mhm.
different if you could afford staff. But then
Yeah.
I had staff for a while and I didn't want them in my house. I was like, I just want to not have people in here. So that
Hmm.
was, I had to make some decisions. Like, we're not going to get a yard so big that we either can't afford the lawn guy or having to have people over here all the time. So I don't know. It sounds like when we were talking before, like a realization you've come to as well. So
Absolutely.
uh, tell me about how to not pay for something if you can pay for something, like your kid something or whatever. What do you do? What's your thought process there?
I am, I think when people see money in their accounts, that's when they feel like they need to spend it.
Mm,
Right. And I have kept a 12-month runway of, Lord forbid, everything stops, like no money coming in, period, no investments to do. Something has gone so awry that I am incapacitated. My wife's out of job. God forbid something negative has happened for at least 12 months. Our lifestyle would not be impacted even 1%. And that much runway sits in an account, which people will probably kill me for this, but doesn't earn any interest. It
yeah.
just sits there in liquid cash. Not a
Emergency
flexible
fund.
TD, not nothing. It just sits there at 0.0% and doesn't get touched. And it's been like that for a good 5 years. So that's a
Yeah.
crop ton of money that I've lost in interest that I could have earned or had to pay taxes on as well. But anyway, it just sits there. And that gives me the mindset to know, okay, that money I'm not going to touch. And then whatever money we have said, okay, we want to keep for things we want to spend on, very small amount, we keep that. And everything else, I just take it and move it over to the business account. And every time I see a dime there, I'm like, bro, something's wrong. I need to go invest this.
Yeah.
So the mindset associated with that account is this should always be at zero. So I know my money is doing something for me. The
Hmm.
mindset here is this should never be below this dollar amount because I know that's my safety net. And this amount should always be between these two numbers and the rest can go over here. Oh, wait, it came here. Now it should be invested. Right. So that has really helped narrow down on, well, we don't really have any money. What are we going to buy stuff with? Because
You
it's
got to
all
get
gone
rid of
over to the
the account
investment account and
and
gone.
everything. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's it. I have no money. When people look at my bank account, they'll be like, bro, you're broke. Yeah. I got $58 in my account.
Yeah.
I got $58, baby. That's it.
Going out
If
to
I could
dinner.
find a way to work, I would.
S- Let's drive to a national park. But that's
Right.
fill up, take a gas.
Yeah. So that's the way I look at it is that if you can get your mindset to say, I'm going to get my money to work for me and
Mhm.
create a separate account or an entity and a different bank. Like I have two different banks for both those things. So when I open the app or my wife opens the app to look at the credit card bills or anything else, that's just personal stuff.
Mhm.
Where the only real money is that safety net. So you're like, well, I can't really touch it anyway. So it's invisible money. I disable it from that total counter. So it doesn't even
Yeah.
show that amount. You're like, it's not really enough to do anything with. That's fine. We'll just pay them the credit card bills and we can spend some money. That's about it. And then you come over to the business side. You're like, well, I got $50, so I'm not really buying anything with that either. No need to buy a cyber truck on my business LLC name and put a wrap around it and drive it around the neighborhoods because I don't really have any money to buy a cyber. So what do you do? So it's just create that separation and then that's what makes it easier.
But you've stated a couple of times that where you're splurging is how many countries you go to each year. And when you get to the point where you don't care about this, but you care a lot about that, I find it mentally, it's much easier to earmark the money. It's like the envelope system. My husband did the same thing. People are like, oh, how'd you get your husband to be so supportive of your business? It's a risky business for lots of zeros after. And
Mhm.
he took our startup capital after we bought a house. He said, I need this much for the down payment on the house so that my W 2 can support the house payment and I can pay everything out of my W 2. And
Mhm.
everything else after that down payment on the house, just go take it. And he said, "To me, it's monopoly money. Invest it, spend it, lose it, I don't care." And that's
Mhm.
that earmarking, of that mindset is what helped him fully get 100% behind the business when it was early on and I didn't know what I was doing, and he had to have a lot of faith and trust that I wasn't gonna waste it.
That's how my wife, like, she's put this money aside and then
Yeah.
go invest it. And I have a
But
loss.
you've decided what your but your luxuries, you've decided together as a family priority. These are our luxuries. We'll drive a Toyota with
Yep.
cloth seats because we can go to 10 countries for as long as we feel like being like, that's a big deal,
Yep.
and that's
Mhm.
expensive.
Yeah. I mean, we took 13 flights this year alone. It ain't cheap.
Yeah, but the thing about it is not only is it expensive, right? But if you get to the point where this is what I care about and the other stuff, it just doesn't matter because I don't wanna make passive income lifestyle sound like scorched earth. Like, we all have to eat beans and rice so that we can have a lot of money invested and have a high net worth. Like, that's not the message we want here at all. It's intentional with where we're gonna splurge and where we're like, "It's just not worth it to me to impress the
Yeah.
neighbor, one more cyber truck going around the neighborhood."
Yeah, exactly. Here, that's exactly what it's like. Oh, just another one for 8. But I think the family thing is very important. So even the decision to leave our house that we just built and moved into to come to Palo Alto was made as a family.
Mhm.
Both of our kids sat down with us in front of the screens. My wife and I put together a spreadsheet of all the school districts from all the way from north to San Jose and said, okay, well, look at the school districts, look at the schools, look at the ratings, look at the demographic, what kind of Asians versus Americans versus white versus all this stuff and socioeconomically disadvantaged percentages. We looked at everything. Palo Alto was like the most expensive place we could have decided to move.
Yeah.
To be honest, 6 houses down from this house is a $14.75 million listed house. 2 houses down is a $5.8 million house. 6 houses to the other side is the ex-CEO of Yahoo.
Yeah.
No joke. So this neighborhood was not cheap by any means of
You're
saying, "Oh,
living
yeah,
half
we
a
can live in
duplex.
4 hours." No, that's what we're living in a half of a duplex. And but the family decided, the kids were 100% on board with, yeah, we're okay leaving our friends, leaving the house that we were in, leaving this massive yard with all this trampoline and all this stuff that we're going to do and move here because it will give us a better education. It'll be a better neighborhood. We'll be closer to the Sunday school at our temple.
Mhm.
All these things tied us as a family. Being vegans, we've been vegan for 8.5 years. The beans and rice we're talking about, that's me. Nope.
Eat more lentils.
And yeah. And same thing again, all 4 of us as a family are in that.
Yeah.
So I think getting the family on board and creating the priorities that are mashed across the board makes a massive difference in getting to, yeah, this is our why.
Yeah. Oh,
It's not the fancy car, it's not the large house, it's not the purses or the designer clothes or the jewelry, it's the travel. Okay,
mhm.
that's all we care about.
Yeah. And it gets to be different for every person. You said a couple of things there that really is. Let's take the veganism. So we were vegan for 10 years and now we're at least I am kind of carnivore. And I have had to I've had to really like steel myself for other people's reactions to the way that I eat for 25 years. Right. And I've been experimenting with lots of different things, trying, dealing with different health problems and things like that. And the vegan thing, really, I had to like grow a thick skin because everybody had an opinion. Everybody was trying to always get me to, well, just take a break here. Because we weren't doing it for religious reasons. We were doing it for health reasons. So they're like, oh, like
Yeah.
a little break, a little snack here, a little whatever. And I feel I had to grow a thick skin. That was like the first really weird thing that I ever did. And then we started homeschooling our kids. And then I changed my diet again. And then we started this, your husband doesn't have a job now. So those things that you do that are weird just almost prepare you to be able to say, yeah, we live in a really nice neighborhood in half a duplex, right? Because you have to be
Mhm.
steeled to do that as well. Do you find that
Yep.
those experiences have helped you to get the mental grit or the fortitude that you need to make decisions that are best for you, not based on what other people think, say, or
And especially from coming from an Indian household. I mean, all of Asia, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, doesn't matter, are very, very, oh, where do you, oh, you live in Bali? That's amazing. So when did you buy this house? Buy. No,
not
I'm renting a house. We're renting a house.
renting
No, I'm
duplex.
renting half a house. A house? You are renting half a house? How poor are you? Why don't you have a job? Go get a job so you can live in a better place. But that's not what I want to do. But no, you need to do that. What's wrong with you?
You need both.
I'm not talking about external people. These are like family members,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
direct family, right? It's just the way the thinking is. It's not like they are superficial and da 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 da. No, it's the culture.
Mhm.
And it's always about, well, what are people going to think? And what are you doing? Why would you live in this kind of a place with this thing? I don't know. And I think you just have to be comfortable with your decisions in your own skin and just say, I really couldn't care less about what you think.
Yeah.
This is my life. My family is good with it. And that's all that matters to me. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think these quirky decisions that we make helps us to get to this point to have a thick skin, like you were saying, and say,
Yeah.
water off a duck's back. I don't keep going. That's it, buddy.
Yeah. Help me have a thick skin on social media too, because the more I get onto podcasting and putting things on social, that's why I like LinkedIn.
More
Everybody's so nice, right? If YouTube people are not nice. Like I have almost had to get a thicker skin just to even put myself out there to be able to raise capital and have conversations with people like, hey, we can change your life or whatever. That's one reason I'm doing a podcast instead of like sales calls. It's a lot easier for me to have a conversation with you about, tell me about your lifestyle. Maybe it'll inspire somebody to book a call and have a conversation with me rather than actually putting myself there and saying, like, I'm gonna just do away with all of this influencer stuff and I'm just gonna get out there and I'm just gonna make phone calls, right? So I haven't quite gotten the thick skin to get to that point. I almost have developed like thick skin to be on social media, but not a thick enough skin to actually like make calls and be
cold
like,
call.
hey, we haven't talked for 20 years. You want to hear about what I'm doing now? They're like, no, thank you. Okay, let's just talk about your kids and your dogs, right? Like I still cannot do that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of crazy decisions. That's why I really like highlighting people on the show to come on and say, like, tell me about what you're doing because sometimes we feel so alone when our neighbors, our own family members, people that we've known for a long time, we're looking at the decisions that we're making and being like, what? Then I talk to somebody like you, and I'm like, well, somebody's speaking my language, like, find your tribe, almost your financial tribe or your vegan tribe or whatever it is, like finding a group of people who are doing it. Just it helps so much to know that you can keep going. So let's shift gears here a bit. One of the things we talked about last summer when I said if you had to, you got everything, lost everything tomorrow, and you had to start all over again. Do you remember what you said? Because it kind of surprised me. What would you do if you had to start over with nothing?
I think I said wholesaling
Yes.
or find,
Oh,
yeah.
so it's like the least passive. It's not. That's not a real estate investor. That's just a real estate business, right? But yeah,
Yeah, no, exactly. I think the goal there was to be able to generate enough income so I could go passive again.
yep. So you could go private lending. That's exactly what you said. And it's funny because we had just started our fund. We had just got our fund up for ground. I think that we had just announced and we were able to take our first dollar, right? Last summer. And we had a private lending fund. And you were like, but you do multifamily. We need the cash flow. It needs to be more
Mhm.
passive. GP thing, I'm not gonna say I'll never do it again, but we're really focused hard on the more passive side of private lending. So that really surprised me when you said that because I didn't even know at that time that you did private lending. And I don't think that you knew that I did private lending at that point because we were so focused on the GP side of the multifamily.
Suck it.
Teach the audience, teach me about private lending because I have people reach out to me every once in a while. They'll have a chunk of cash, they had an exit, or they've been saving up bonuses for years or they sold a house or something, right? And they've got like $1 million, $2 million. And they're like, I want to start private lending. I say, okay, so you got to get on your MLS, you got to start running ARVs, you got to figure out how to calculate construction costs so you can underwrite. You have to be able to underwrite the loans, right? Like, oh, I don't know, that sounds like a lot of work. And they don't realize like how not passive private lending is until you learn how to do those things quickly and easily, and then it can become passive. So take us through on the
Right.
technical side of private lending. If somebody has a chunk of cash that they're sitting on, or they're wholesaling or something like that to generate more cash so that they can start private lending, what are the beginning stages of that business look like? How time consuming is it? Active versus passive? And how long does it take to get to the point where you're like, I want to quit my job and I only work 5 hours a week?
I think that number will be different for everyone,
Okay.
but I tell a lot of people this, that if you have a small amount of cash, and I consider sub 100,000 to be a small amount of cash,
Okay.
because for private lending, that is a small amount of cash. And especially depending on the city and state that you want to invest in,
Mhm.
it is a small amount of cash. If you want to have a fractional holding of a fund or of a joint venture of an LLC that is, let's say, hey, we're funding $1 million acquisition in San Francisco or downtown Palo Alto. And actually, I can't say Palo Alto. I found a fixer upper for 2.25 million with like nothing in the house. But sorry, I misspoke. We're somewhere in the Bay Area, we're buying $1 million house that needs $1 million rehab. So it could be worth 5 million,
Okay.
right? So now you need a $2 million loan to make that happen. So if you don't have the 2 million, you're going to have to find partners, put the money together and go through TribeVest or an LLC or limited partnership or something or a fund and say, all right, we're all going to put money in and we're going to be fractional owners. And there's even platforms, right? Like fractional lending and stuff that are available for that stuff. So if you're going to do that, it's not really your stuff. It's now you're relying on other people's underwriting, other people's decisions, and just you're one of many votes to make a decision on, do we want to foreclose now? What do we want to do with the money? Do we, whatever we're doing. So I don't do, I have never yet done that and I don't intend to. I also don't fund rehab costs. Never have, don't plan on doing it. Low stress, no real added benefit to me, don't care about it. So if you are going to start out in lending, find a good market that you want to lend in because it may not be your backyard. If you live in California and you got $200,000 to $250,000 to invest into a loan, it won't get you far because you can't really find properties of that dollar amount, especially not enough to just say, here's a 250,000, go buy a house and flip it. It doesn't happen. So if you're lending to other investors that are seasoned and you're lending to people who are doing this as a business and just need your money for that 3 to 6 month turnaround, flip it, hold tail it, put a tenant in there, get their seasoning period and refinance out of your loan. Whatever their end goal is, if that's your goal to lend to investors who are running it as a business, you need to find a market where your money will actually be worth it. And so for me, that was Indianapolis. I was already buying and flipping properties in Indianapolis. I had rentals and I knew what they cost. And I was like, well, my $100,000 is going to go pretty far in Indy because it ain't going nowhere in California. I can't even buy a shed for 100 grand. At that point, that's your number one thing is to say, okay, get comfortable with the fact that you may not be investing in your own backyard if private lending is your thing and you don't have enough money to support an actual realistic acquisition in your backyard. And beyond that is when you start coming to say, okay, well, now that I've decided I'm going to invest in state, out of state, whatever that decision is, then you start narrowing down on saying, okay, do I want to invest with just people who've done at least X number of deals and in neighborhoods that have at least this many sales in the last X number of months and have a price point of sale to be at least this much above what I'm planning on lending on. So it gives you that runway to say, okay, if I'm going to fund $100,000 loans and that's my number, and the properties are always selling for 250,000 or more in that neighborhood, and the people that are buying these houses for 70 or 150,000 have done at least 50 deals in the last 10 years. Well, maybe now it reduces the amount of stress and headache on you on every single deal because now you've said, okay, my borrower box is people who have experience. My neighborhood box is where values are constantly going up, and my market lending box is reduced to where my money will actually be useful. Now it makes that job a lot easier to say, hey, I just have to open up the MLS, pay a broker that I found online, asked him to do 10 different houses that I was interested in buying in, buy a house through him or pay him money to do those appraisals and then see how they compare against actual sales and actual transactions to see how close he was or she was.
Mhm.
And then find a broker you trust and say, all right, I'm going to hire you for every loan I'm doing. And every time I get a loan request that I have some idea that I'm going to do, I'm going to send you the deal, the photos, the access code, go walk the property, run the comps, walk the neighborhood, and give me your broker pricing opinion, the BPO, that will be as is, ARV, and what you think the rehab costs are because you are an investor friendly broker who has sold 15 flips this week
Yeah.
or this month, this year. So you clearly know that these rehabs cost us some amount of money. So I think building the team is your number one helpful task to do upfront before you get into lending. Build a team of people that you can rely on. I have never ordered appraisals. I have never ordered inspections, and I have never charged any fees or points to initiate a loan. I couldn't care less. To
Mhm.
me, if the guy has done 300 deals this year, done. Their background yells for itself, forget speaks for itself. And if they've almost always made money on these deals, heck, even better.
Yeah, 'cause they'll keep coming
But if
back.
they're right, but if they're paying their lender back, if their settlement statements show that they lost money, that they had to bring 10,000 to the closing on the sale, but their lender got paid back exactly what they were owed, that speaks volume.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to be made whole regardless of the investor's end result, well, now you're in good hands. So I think it's all about really finding ways to reduce the amount of stress you take on when you are doing a loan.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely learn how the MLS works, learn how to comp out properties, go watch videos on YouTube or anywhere else where people are talking about the rehabs they're doing in the city that you're looking to invest in so you can see what kind of labor and materials costs look like. Go do a flip of your own, fund your own deal, make your deal be the first loan that you give. Be like, hey, I'm going to fund my own deal. Give yourself a 10%, 12% interest rate and say, yeah, I'm going to pay myself back that much. Great.
Yeah.
Second entity, first entity lends to second entity. They pay back at the closing. So you know what the process is. You know what the loan docs are going to look like. Go get a lawyer. Don't start doing your own docs the first loan around, please. And no, the title company's lawyers are not the best at writing loan docs.
No.
Their job to write loan docs for private notes. Their jobs are on making sure that their title company is protected in terms of title insurance and closing protection letters and all that stuff. They just, I mean, you could go to freaking ChatGPT and get a template of a loan document for any state, city you want. But is it going to be the best? No. Is it going to hold up in court? Probably not. Is it going to avoid you from losing your money? Probably not. So not worth it. A couple of experienced lawyers to do your loan docs the first two, 3 times around. Use three different lawyers. One for this deal, one for another deal, one for the third deal. Get their loan docs, figure out what works best, and then piecemeal it together if you really want to and say, yeah, I took the verbiage from here, made sure every section was accounted for, added some things in, changed the terms, added late fees, whatever you want to do, and then start using that document eventually down the road. But please don't do it the first time around.
Yeah. Licensing, good pack of documents. That's huge for a lot of people. They recognize that they don't have the ability to do that, but
Mhm.
either hiring a lawyer and then licensing the reuse of that document or buying a
Mhm.
document pack from a provider who's going to give you some support. There are a lot of options there. And the other thing I
Yep.
think a lot of people don't realize about private lending is it has actually a security. And so I have people who will get into private lending and have no idea that they're structuring their loans incorrectly, that it's in violation of their state securities laws when
Usury
right
laws,
there,
security laws. Yeah.
it's on a website. You just do some research, right? Like, or make sure your lawyer understands that private lending is you are with your own money, the rules are a little bit different, but
Mhm.
the way you structure those notes is not different. When you start raising capital from limited partners, then there's an extra layer of securities compliance in there. And sometimes I don't think people really realize that because they don't think of loans as security. So it's really important to understand that. I love how you broke it down into the categories, like your market, your borrower, your legal, because there's so many details in each one of those. But if you can think about it at higher level categories, and it does definitely help to figure out like, okay, what details do I need to figure out? If somebody wants to
Mhm.
learn private lending, where do you normally send them to say like, hey, I want to Do you just say, come do a loan with me? Or how does that normally look if somebody says, I want to learn how to?
Yeah, you just easier to walk them through the process when they're actually investing their money because now they pay attention. If you send someone to a course and they have to pay 5 grand, whoopity freaking do that. If they have to go watch YouTube videos or read a book or listen to something that was a low cost resource, there's no real harm to them. But the moment you tell them, come invest the money in an actual deal where you will hold the note, you will be the lender, your property, your headache, your money in the deal, then they're paying attention to everything that you're doing to make sure their money is safe.
Yeah.
And they learn the best that way
Yeah.
because now they have full access and I answer every question they ask. And then they know, okay, this is exactly how the loan doc was structured. What does this mean? What does that mean? Why did you include this? Why did you put that in here? Why is this not compliant? Well, just wait, can't you just put this in? Or why can't we just charge this rate? You're able to sort of answer questions real time and walk through a deal rather than teaching hypotheticals that they will forget about and then come back eventually anyways and say, can you walk me through a deal? Well, why'd you spend all that time and money doing the other thing when you could have just done this the first time around and already gotten your money back and been doing your third deal by now? So I find that to be the best approach in teaching someone about private lending is to just say, all right, here's a deal, put your money in it and let's see how it works.
Yeah. And but you have an action taking personality. I don't know if you've had to develop that or if that's always been something that's been a character trait of yours since you were younger. A lot of people, they just make a lot of excuses. They're doing research is a form of procrastination. So sometimes recognizing if you're an action taker versus a research procrastinator, it's like getting really honest about what you're like. I know that a lot of our private lenders are people who have looked at doing private lending themselves and are like, never mind. So just put it in our fund. And then we keep the points and they keep all the interest. So it's a win-win for them
Yeah.
because they don't really have to do anything. But we definitely like working with more educated investors. There's a level of trust that has to happen there. But at the same time,
Mhm.
we don't like working with investors who like, oh, well, you've just done this a lot. I just trust you. Just do what you think is best. Like that's not my ideal investor. If people want to work with you, if people want to get your free advice, want to learn from you, how do people get a hold of you?
Just look up my name on Google. I'm sure you'll find the website or a link to get in touch with me. Just that's, I think that's the easiest way. My website has a contact me page, Calendly link, a WhatsApp message. My info is literally out there. I don't hide my numbers or do any of that stuff. It's out there. Just reach out to me any way you would like. My website is jgbllcre.com. And that's the easiest way to find me. And I have a lot of podcast episodes up there from all these types of conversations. And you listen to all of them and kind of get a sense of who I am and what I do. And there's some educational content on my YouTube channel as well. But overall, just type in my name on Google. I'm sure you'll find me.
Yeah, definitely have enjoyed the open book part of my relationship with you. And the easiest place for me to find you is in our free club every Monday night. So you want to find Jaspreet there. We do networking for the first half hour. You're there most weeks in
Yeah.
out room.
And I'm traveling internationally for weeks on end. So of course I'm not there.
Sometimes that happens. I'll be like, where'd Jaspreet go? Right. But then you come back. So
Yeah.
be sure to check that out, riseclubcapital.com. It just literally click the button that says join the meeting. There are no opt-ins, automatic drip campaigns, or any of that. If you want to sign yourself up for email reminders, you can do that. But Jaspreet,
Isn't it what you
thank you.
hear?
Yeah, it's this is the thing. It's like when you don't have to do it for the money, like I'm not charging membership fees. Yeah, you get what you pay for, right? But it's just something I like doing and something I have to do to show up to
Mhm,
write deals because otherwise I procrastinate doing it when I have
mhm.
money to invest. And so for me, it's like a group of gym buddies. And so I've really valued getting to know you there and doing deals with you and having your expertise in the room with us when we're evaluating deals, always adding a lot of value. And I just really appreciate
Appreciate it.
you donating your time, really. It's basically what you're doing.
Yeah, staying active in the community, right? That's all it is. If I can help someone out, great. I learn new things or I look at things that I'm like, "Oh gosh, thank goodness I didn't make that mistake," or
Mhm.
looking at underwriting files going, "Where did they put this information?
Yeah.
Why does this look so wonky?
Yep.
Oh, well, good thing we didn't make that mistake."
It teaches me a lot about talking to investors because I'm looking at people's pitch decks and I'm looking at other people's underwriting and being like, "Yeah, this is not," or "This is really good. I wanna emulate because they're doing a really good job of getting important information." Yeah, wide variety, plus really good deal flow. I think that's one thing that you've also helped to bring to the group is just opportunity for people to be able to invest either by lending money with you in one of the deals that when you were GP or just introducing us to people who have deals. So I always ask at the end of every show, like, why should people reach out to you? But I think that this is one of those shows where it's just evident. I don't even have so she's just some generosity in the real estate space. It's hard to find. So reach out to Jaspreet and be sure to reach out to me, investwithemma.com, get some time on my calendar. And just if I can't help you, I probably know somebody I can make some introductions or at least point you in the right direction. If you want to be a passive investor in our fund, go to risecapitalinvestments.co and just click on investor login and you can create your profile there and get notified of our deals. So appreciate you coming on, Jaspreet, and
Sure
spreading
thing.
the real estate love and just being there to support what I do and letting me support what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was an awesome pleasure to be here.
Until next time, thanks everyone for coming. Be sure to reach out and tell us about your next passive income adventure.